All right, you guys asked for the top two models, Craftsman and Ryobi's brushless 7 1/4 inch circular saws, put up next to each other. We're gonna go through the specs first because there's a lot of differences between these two. Then we're gonna go into cutting and what happens while you're cutting, because I think that is also important. Stick with us. So before we come in and do a deep dive on these two saws, first the price point. Craftsman has an MSRP at Lowe's currently of $129, but is sale price of $99. It's basically always been 99 bucks. The Ryobi HP model is $129. Now, will it go on sale when it really gets out there? That's yet to be seen, but I'm gonna bet these two are gonna be priced almost exactly the same. Next is going to be voltage, because Craftsman again claims to be a V20, and don't get this Craftsman from Lowe's confused with anything from Sears. This is the Stanley Black Decker Craftsman. So this V20 is actually an 18 volt system. So we are actually looking at two 18 volt batteries here. Both of them connect in different ways. We have the slide system here on the Craftsman and more of the pop it into place and have all the connections going on the Ryobi. So we are using a 6 amp hour HP battery on the Ryobi and a 6 amp hour Craftsman battery on the Craftsman. Now the big difference when we look at these two saws is going to be RPM. The Ryobi is 4,300, the Craftsman is 5,000. So the Craftsman is really what we would see as a more DIY version of the DeWalt saws. That's including, mimics the FlexVolt, FlexVolt Advantage, XR, and even Power Detect. A lot of the features are the same, a lot of the build quality is the same. We're not seeing anything pushed down with the Ryobi. It's kind of its own thing. But in the power testing, when we did these two separately, both did really well. The Ryobi depth of cut at 90, 2 7/16. The Craftsman depth of cut at 90, 2 9/16. Craftsman depth of cut at 45, 2 inches. Ryobi 1 3/4 inches. They both bevel 0 to 56, but the big difference in that being on the Craftsman, we have detents, meaning we'll have a small click at 22.5 and at 45. That'll help us to get exactly there, lock it down and move on, or we can continue on to 56. There are 0 detents or any helping spots on the Ryobi. It just goes and you have to lock it down where it's at. That's kind of I really like detents. It's easy, it's quick, you know you're there, you're not guessing, and you don't have to check it out. Now, dust extraction, the Ryobi does come with this dust extractor. It bolts on the back here. In our last video, we went over this. It's unfortunate because the blade guard on the bottom covers the full dust extraction point, even when you're at full depth of cut, because full depth of cut would be right here. So this didn't work at all, flat out. So we're not even gonna bring this up today because the Craftsman has one that is optional. Now this is the same as the DeWalt version basically. It works great, but I do not have this, so we're not gonna compare dust collection. What I think we need to do is come in and look at both of these saws and show a little bit of the differences that we found while we're reviewing each one of them. When we get up close and personal with these saws, they're very, very similar. Depth adjustment's going to be in the back and to the left. The Ryobi is going to be more in the center. They work the same. Again, beveling is very simple. It just takes a little bit more time with the Ryobi, and since we're close, you can see where we have a detent here, another one that holds it. It's just simple and easy to use on the Craftsman. And while you're looking at the two, you can see the difference in the shoe. Where we have an aluminum or magnesium shoe on the Craftsman, we have a stamped shoe on the Ryobi. When you look at the bottom, there looks like there's something that could be used with some sort of track on the Ryobi. I do not know about that, so if you do, you can leave it in the comments, because this is very similar to Ryobi's brushless model that they've had out in the past. I'm a huge fan of this more flat style shoe than having a bunch of little divots in the shoe, because here things get caught and it is what it is. But here's my major complaint, and it's not on this saw. I did not do any adjustments on this guy. Hopefully you can see that. We are a perfect 90-degree cut there. Zero adjustments, just using the detent, slid it up right from the factory. The Ryobi has an adjustment on it. It is this small screw right up front. And if you want more information on this, go to the reviews of each individual saw. You can see them. If you look here, we are off in 2 inches. We're off about a solid more than an 1/8 inch, and that's after trying to adjust it. So there's no way that we can get this saw to cut a 90. It's physically hitting on this edge, it's not hitting here, and then it's hitting in this edge and this edge. So we have 3 edges. Someone suggested we get out a file and start filing them down so that it'll come down a little bit further. There's a possibility that you could get to that, but I'm also fearful of weakening this whole piece. Other people have commented, and I haven't found it on this model, that the fence is not square, so that when they use something to cut in a square or straight line, that the saw will start binding up. And here, I mean, just a very simple, very simple look. That's not the case on this one. You could get more. Now, both saws suffer from this issue. If you use a speed square to set up your cut, if you are at a full depth of cut, this saw is really bad as far as how it hits. And it hits this motor. This is very low. So in order to do or use a speed square, you have to come up. So your depth of cut is significantly less. In fact, it's less by however much here that you have on your speed square. Some are worse than others, but in this case, using a made in the USA Empire, I have to come up quite a bit, which gives me just enough cut to do a 2x-dimensional lumber cut. Now, with the Craftsman, I'm only off by, with this guy, maybe an 1/8 inch. So it works better, and in fact, if I had one that didn't have as big of a lip on the bottom, the Craftsman would have 0 issues. As you can see, you can almost get your finger underneath here as to where the Ryobi is when it's full up. You got 1/4 inch. So there are some differences there. Do they make a huge deal as far as specs? Not really, but in some ways, yes. Is someone going to care that the Ryobi cannot get completely set to a 90? I would, but is a precision of a saw is what you need? I don't know. I just like the adjustments to be right. When you do set this up as a 45, it is perfect, and when you do use the detents on the Craftsman, it is also perfect. Realistically, let's switch out blades so we're the same and get to cutting. Someone mentioned to me in the comments how they really liked how the Ryobi battery sat off to the side and it was out of the way. And that's true if you're using the tiny 2 amp hour battery, it goes back with the motor, but I wouldn't suggest using this saw with anything less than a 4 amp hour high performance battery, and realistically the 6 amp hour is kind of the minimum. Now we have raised this up, hopefully enough, and we haven't raised it up enough to get by the speed square. We're just going to do a simple cross cut here. Listen to how it sounds. We can listen to the RPM difference. One sounds a little bit smoother than the other, huh? Both saws are adjusted up. We're just gonna rip a half sheet of 1/2 inch OSB here, and just listen again to how the motor sounds and watch where the dust comes out. And I was moving along quite fast on this. I'm going to slow up so we can see exactly where all this dust is going. I'm going to highly recommend that you don't watch this on your cell phone and that you can watch it on something larger so you can see what's happening. Let's go with the Craftsman. It was a fast cut. Let's come back and do a nice slow one. You can see where the dust is even laying on the wood as to what's happening with it, and how much of it I get in the face is 100% different between the Craftsman and the Ryobi. I'm eating a ton of particles from the Ryobi, where the Craftsman, I don't have anything really coming up at my face. Full depth of cuts with each. Now, I'm not going to set one up so that they're equal. Remember, the Craftsman cuts much deeper than the Ryobi does. So we're just going to let them both go eat at their full depth of cut, but I want you to watch where the sawdust goes, what happens, the sounds, and everything else as we do this. If you can hear me, I'm feeling a lot of heat on my hands. I'm not trying to push this saw at all. I'm getting a lot of heat back here at this point, right? Probably about 1 foot and 18 inches in. I'm getting the heat on my hand, which is usually going to be the sawdust binding up. Let's see where we go. So just as you know, these are Makita blades. They're not as good as some of the Diablo blades, but again, I'm always setting stuff up so that if you purchase a tool, you're going to be more impressed than what I'm trying to use it for. In this case, this blade is performing worse than what we showed in our initial review with the factory blade. Let's keep going. So it is performing worse, and you're seeing what's happening here with all this sawdust. It's building up in not a good situation. Let's just get through the end. I get it, don't bang your saws around, yeah, but at the same point, that's just full of sawdust. So here we're cutting deeper, and if we have the same issues, we at least have the same blade, right? So even if it's a worse cut than what it was factory, we at least still have the same blade. Let's go. I'm now starting to feel a little bit of heat, just like the other saw. So we plugged up here also. And we still are in this area. So right about here, this saw, the Craftsman, plugged up as far as dust extraction out the side. And that's what started to get the heat coming as we got further down. Huge difference between the two as far as making this cut with the same blade. All right, two things that I want you to take away from that test. Obviously, how a saw ejects its dust is important, and it's also important that it keeps working. Two, sometimes a really good blade will help a saw out, and sometimes a really bad blade will hurt a saw. And I'm not saying Makita is horrible, but I've found with the blades here, these Makitas, they're still brand new and in the shop for a reason. It's because they don't cut anywhere near as good as some of the higher end or better Diablo blades. But either way, these are the same blades. It's very, very clear that the Craftsman had more power to push through this. And due to the heat that I was feeling, and I was trying to communicate that with you, and I hope it just didn't screw up the whole video, but when I was communicating with you, when I felt the heat, it was much earlier in the cut. And most likely that the reason the Ryobi continued to cut out was because of the amount of sawdust that was building up, not only in the saw and around the guard, also in my throat. But man, it simply doesn't eject sawdust well. So on long cuts, it sucks. It's not noticeable on small cross cuts. The Craftsman also plugged up, but it at least made most of the cut. And if we would have had dryer wood that wasn't pressure treated, I think that the Craftsman, as far as my experience with this saw and the DeWalt, would have continued to eject the sawdust, but the more moisture in the wood just binds it up a little bit, plugs that port, and you get stuck where you are. Guys, we did these two reviews completely separately, 100% separately, and I brought it up in the recent Ryobi review, hey, check out the Craftsman review, and everybody said they wanted a side by side. I'll be just dead honest with you. I don't know why you wanted it. Did everybody just want to see the Craftsman beat up on the Ryobi? Because it beats it in specs, it beats it in quality, it beats it in the cutting performance. The only thing that it doesn't beat it in is the fact that Stanley Black Decker has a ton of batteries and a ton of different brands. And the Porter cable brand's kind of come and gone. The Black & Decker brand has it. None of the batteries are compatible between DeWalt, Porter cable, Craftsman, Black & Decker. There are some modifications I've heard some people could do to make one fit the other. But the reality is that you're in a different brand. Now, it would have been super cool if they would have said, okay, Craftsman and DeWalt batteries fit together. I think that could have expanded the brand and grew it. But either way, they didn't. And they didn't do it for a reason. And that hurt this brand. Now, Craftsman has been just beat on by Sears. And unfortunately, the manufacturer for the old CP3 tools is out still selling other tools at Lowe's, the Cobalt brand. So while that might have improved, I think that the reputation from the old CP3 and the old Sears quality tools that company built is killing the people who want to come in and say, yeah, Craftsman's going to be my brand. But I'll be honest with you, the Craftsman tools are mostly old DeWalt tools. There are a few differences. Watch the separate videos, we'll show you. But realistically, even the hand tools are some of the similar DeWalt tools, and I think they've got their quality back. It's just going to be, is it too late? Can they grab all those people who are already mad at Craftsman for doing all these different changes and not the battery platforms, this, that, and the other? I'll tell you, some of the Craftsman 60-volt outdoor power equipment was some of the best stuff that we'd seen in a while. And we do have a new DeWalt model coming out this year also. So I'm expecting hopefully that Craftsman line has stuck around. And again, people had a hard time finding the V60 line. And according to everybody I talked to, it's still going, but it's been on clearance, some great deals. Can you get the stuff for it? Crazy world we live in, I understand. So there are two big competing factors here. This saw didn't really even compete today, in my opinion, as far as the Ryobi. The Craftsman has a lot to get over for people to buy into it, but for the price point, the sales that you're finding, and the performance, they're killing it. Again, love to hear what you guys are thinking, and that always helps me out. And I'd also like to hear if this is what you thought, if you didn't see these two videos prior to in separate reviews, and you aren't part of the subscriber base on our channel and part that communicates with me and says, hey, try this tool, try that tool. Super, super interesting for me to at least see it. I'm gonna go get the dust out of my throat, cough a little bit, and try to clear my lungs out. I appreciate your time watching this video. I know some of them are getting longer, but there's a lot of information in here, and I hope you watch everything. Please give us a like in this video, comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, have a great day.